Hello and welcome to Forever Rugby on SuperSport. A massive day for South African rugby as Springbok lock ETZEBETH returns to the country and will be joining the Sharks with basically immediate effect after being granted an early release from Toulouse due to the fact that this wasn't really playing for the French side. And I think the beginning of the end was, Toulouse CEO coming out and saying basically he was been a bad signing, which was quite strange because, he came out and said he's been a bad signing because he hasn't been available. And the reason he wasn't available was either through injury or through playing for the Springboks. Now, playing for the Springboks, I mean, you know what you're getting. You're getting one of the best Springbok locks of all time. You're going to get somebody who's going to become a international centurion this year. So to then be surprised that he's often away on international duty just shows you didn't really think it too much through. And then unfortunately, because he picked up a number of concussions, he was unavailable then post the Springbok season for a large amount of the games. But long story short rather, he is back in South Africa. He's been playing URC and he's going to be joining the Sharks, which means that the Sharks officially have a full-blooded international in every single department across the 15. They have international props, they have international hookers, they have international locks, they have international flankers, they have an international eighth man, an international scrum half, an international fly half, international wings, international centers, international fullback. This Shark squad can't get much stronger, to be perfectly honest. It is an insane amount of talent within one unit. And what is strange is that the salary cap has been increased, okay? Now, every single union has the same salary cap. So, for example, in theory, and this is the reason salary caps are there. First of all, they're there to make sure that teams do not bankrupt themselves by paying players unsustainable amounts of money and then they can't afford it, and et cetera, and that kind of all falls down. It's also supposed to be leveling the playing field so that you can never have one team hoarding all the talent, and being able to sort of financially outmuscle the other franchises. Now, that is the case, obviously, with URC franchises and Currie Cup franchises. However, the idea is that there's a level playing field per tier, basically. So on a tiered system, that these teams, will all be able to compete at this level. Then there's one tier down, two tier down, etc. Now, the biggest frustration is you look at that and you think that the concept's great, except how can you sit there looking at the exact same salary cap? You look at the Shark squad, you look at the Lion squad, and you think that the Sharks are sitting there with something like 16 or 17, I think even 18 internationally capped players across their 15-man squad. I think it rises up to 20 if you include sevens, for example. And the Lions are currently sitting with, I think it's 3 internationally capped players, but no current Springbok, no current internationals whatsoever. They've obviously got Yanni du Plessis who's played, they've got Jager who's played, and they've got Willem Alberts who's played at international level. But no players who currently play internationally or part of any international squads. And yet, in theory, their salary caps are the same. So they should be able to afford similar sort of players, assuming that the Lions do use their full salary cap. So it's very frustrating. I mean, for Sharks fans, it's wonderful. For South African fans, it's wonderful that ETZEBETH is going to be back in the country. We get to go and watch them on a weekly basis. And this was what the URC was always supposed to do. It was always supposed to help us be able to, first of all, keep our players in the country and be able to bring players back. And a lot of people are quite apprehensive about that idea. But it is happening. Even ETZEBETH is back in the country. That's the big thing. And the big news as well is that on the same day as they officially announced that ETZEBETH is joining the Sharks, Jager is now being linked with a move to the Stormers. So it does look like, with this move to sort of the Northern Hemisphere, the Springbok management are encouraging players to return to South Africa, come and play your rugby here. And there is going to be an increased salary cap, but not. I mean, it's literally well less than half of what the French salary cap is. I think the French salary cap sits at 194 million rand a year, whereas I think the South African one will rise up to about 69. So it's still absolutely nowhere near. So we're never going to be able to compete, but it is still obviously on the rise. And I think the biggest thing is that the Sharks commercially have become so powerful that they are being able to sort of obviously, package on certain things to these sort of salaries. So your salary might be this, from the Sharks, but through Rock Nation, through all the various Sharks connections, through their business and stuff like that, you've got to imagine that there must be a lot of commercial sort of stuff behind the scenes, in terms of ensuring players will get sort of commercial deals and will get sponsorships and stuff like that to make it worth their while to go to the Sharks. Because, to be quite frank, there's no other major reason why you're leaving a mega contract in France to come back to South Africa to earn substantially less, unless you aren't earning substantially less. But the move to Jager to Stormers is that will be another massive sort of coup for SA Rugby, because we want our best players playing in the country. Now, at the end of the day, we don't mind overseas players playing for the Springboks because, they play a good standard of rugby. They get to play, and the overseas players get to pay them a lot of money, and then they can come and form for the Springboks. But obviously, ideally, we do want our best players playing over here. I want to be able to go to Ellis Park, watch Lions versus Bulls, and have 10, 12 Springboks on display. That's what we want to have. That's what we used to have for so many years. And then the brain drain has basically been sort of unstoppable. They haven't even been able to begin to sort of try and put a cork in it. But now we are starting to see a bit of a return. And it's not just necessarily the best players. Someone like Brand Krobler is coming back to the country. Bringing back, Tim Swiel, who was at Harlequins, bringing back Joan de Jong, bringing back Dion Fourie, bringing back sort of the older generation players, even Willem Alberts and Yannick Duplessis to a certain degree. They're haven't been quite as good as some of the signings, but being able to bring certain players back and towards the country is great to see. The Bulls bringing so many players back, and Marcel Coetzee, Johan Goosen, Harold Forster, Lionel Poo, it's really good to see, and hopefully it'll only continue happening, and we can start bringing more and more players back. But even more importantly, for example, Warwick Galant is set to leave the Stormers to go overseas. However, at the same time, Salman Murat has signed a new contract extension, so certain players you might not be able to keep, and I think that's what we need to have, a situation where your superstars, your superstars are overseas because you can't match them. But not that ETZEBETH isn't a superstar, but that there are certain players, and you can select a certain amount of players who, despite being some of the best players in the world, you can keep them in South Africa. Siya Kolisi, Evan ETZEBETH, two of the top players in the world, Kanya some of the top probably 10 players in the world, managing to keep them in South Africa. Which is really cool. But let me know what you think of the signing down in the comments below. Let me know what you think about Lood Jager to the Stormers. We'll obviously have more on that as it sort of unfolds. But I think from an SA Rugby fan, it's really good because we get to see Evan ETZEBETH every single week, more than just the Springboks, and I think that's the biggest thing that we wanted to see from the URC. So early signs, for example, is that the acquisition by the Sharks is working, and what we then need to see is more of that. We need to see a private company going in and buying the Lions. We need to see a private company going in and buying the Western Province, bailing them out of their financial issues and starting to build strong franchises like we've seen with the Bulls and like we're seeing with the Sharks. And hopefully this is the sort of first couple of steps towards reaching that point. Please do smash like on the video and subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steven, and I'll chat to you soon.